Hey guys. Okay, so right out of the gate, the first thing to talk about is how this episode focuses on Nami and Usopp's fight with Page One and Ulti. And I've always been that weirdo who's always liked it more when the underdog members of the crew have a really good emotional throwdown. Like the don't get me wrong, I love it when the monster trio does it, but they're more kind of the epic icing on the cake, so to speak. And but when the more underdog members of the crew really fight, I think that's what really showcases where it showcases what they can do. I feel that really showcases this honestly more the strength of the series than anything else. But revisiting this fight just from what we got in this episode, I realize this is a much bigger turning point for Nami, even more than Usopp, honestly, because in the final moment of the episode where we see her emotionally break down, I don't think I gave that moment as much credit as I should have when reading the manga, because seeing it here, it made me realize that this was like Nami's wake-up call. The moment where she realized just how truly dangerous the New World actually is, but also just how much the strength and power of the Yonko truly do represent that danger. And at best, everything up to this point has been a trial run for this moment. But even despite Nami knowing that, even despite being overwhelmed by Ulti's power, and despite her suffering, despite her being scared for her life, Nami didn't relent. She refused to renounce her captain's dream. The only thing she ever would say is, "I surrender," because it's the only thing that in the moment that Nami could say without feeling like she betrayed her captain. Like everything Luffy has done to her, I don't want to say she feels indebted to him, but she pretty much saved him. But he pretty much saved her at her lowest point during the Arlong arc, which and now just saying those words would feel like a betrayal to him, which also just goes to show just how much faith and trust Nami really does have in Luffy. Like despite how many spats and comedic beatdowns Nami may give him, she still does have faith in Luffy and his judgment. And I feel that's something that is often overlooked when it comes to Luffy and Nami's relationship, because I think a lot of the trust and the faith that Nami and Luffy have in each other is very much underplayed in favor of the humor, in playing up more the humorous side of their relationship. But it's in moments like this where I think the strength of their bond really does show. Also, something else I never really noticed before, but Ulti is kind of an example of just how entitled being a crew member to a Yonko, but especially ones like Kaido and Yonko, can make someone. Like when you're pretty much under that umbrella of influence, there's kind of that almost that natural feeling of invincibility, and where you don't need, where you suddenly get this higher than thou attitude, where you don't feel you need to prove anything, just impose that specific Yonko's will onto others and make them feel the weakness of their opponent, and looking up on their opponent and looking down on them in that way is kind of, and in looking down on them in that way, it's represented as an absolute statement of fact, like nothing to be debated. Like our captain, the Yonko, is the strongest, and it's really showing that kind of entitlement factor that I think Ulti really feels, which honestly just kind of makes her even more of an annoying character than I ever gave her credit for. Like as much as this should improve Ulti's character for me, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, wow, you are an entitled bitch. Like, yeah, it's only now that it's funny, but only now am I kind of realizing that shit. But yeah, of course, with Tana entering, busting through Onigashima at the end of the episode, we can pretty much tell how the fight is going to play out from here. Like it's going to be the strike back factor for both Nami and Usopp. Like this is good. Like Tama's interference, I think, has provided the perfect distraction for both of them to strike back now. Now, with that said, I do want to talk about pacing with not only with this episode, but the anime in whole when it comes to Wano, because on its face, the pacing for this episode was decent, I think is the best way to put it. It could have been a lot better, but it is what it is. Then, as I was scrolling through the comments section on the episode itself, obviously you're going to be met with the usual troll complaints like One Piece is trash, mid-piece, that kind of shit. But there was one comment, but then scrolling through, I came across one comment that said the manga is roughly 40 or so chapters ahead of the manga is roughly 40 or so chapters ahead of the manga. And honestly, when I looked at what particular chapter that this episode adapted, it's even more than 40 chapters. And so he said the manga is more than 40 chapters or so ahead of the manga. You'd think they'd at least cover more than a chapter, or a chapter, like two chapters or more at this point. Again, on surface level, that does feel like a very standard complaint. But the more I looked into it, I looked into it, and the chapter it adapted was one that was like even more than 40 chapters ahead. And it's one of those things where it did kind of make me wonder why Toei is going at the current pace they are, given the fact that the only two, given that fact that we're still in the 930s. We're still basically only in the 930s, and that kind of made me wondering what's going on, and why Toei is going at the current pace they are, given that fact. And the only two conclusions I could come up with ultimately is one, they want to give the appropriate focus to each of the Straw Hats fights, even if it means slowing the pacing down, which honestly is something I can kind of understand, because personally, a good majority of the Straw Hats fights at this point in this, I remember reading a lot, when reading a lot of these fights in the manga, I remember that a good majority of the Straw Hats fights, honestly, felt very emotionally lackluster. Like there wasn't as much weight as I thought there would be to them. So maybe in their attempt to slow things down, Toei's trying to make is trying to at least maybe fix that problem a bit by making the fights themselves more of the focus each episode, and being real. Anything that can be done to help that, I help be done with that and make me give a little bit extra of a shit, I'm kind of okay with, frankly. I'm just saying. And I think this is the more plausible one. I think it's partly the age-old thing with Toei, where they're waiting for the manga to reach a conclusive point, in the fight with Luffy versus Kaido, or just in the final moments of one itself, like before they really like pick up the pace with the anime. Like that's that, and that one's just kind of assuming, and that one's me just kind of assuming. But I think it's probably the more likely. I don't know. I can't say with certainty either way, but those are the two like more plausible reasons I can come up with. Frankly, I don't know what exactly else it would be. With that said, even though it wasn't extended too much, I believe the fight between Marco and Big Mom was extended a bit, which there's kind of both a good and a bad there. On one hand, it is once again a case of the anime giving Big Mom more to do and more of a threatening presence, but in some ways it is going to make what happens a little bit later on more disappointing. So it's kind of a give and take. One thing I do like, though, that they definitely extended this scene is they definitely do make Queen's connection to Judge a lot more apparent in this episode, because I think in the manga it was mostly kept secret until Sanji actively confronts Queen. But here we're getting a little bit more build up to the fact that yes, both Queen and Judge were associates at one point in time, and just establishing that connection like a lot more early on for later, which when we get the full reveal of what exactly that connection was. So yeah, and that's something I do like. And as I said last week's episode, it's just so satisfying to see Apu just having an absolute bad day with like how he was facing like both Drake and and Zoro in this episode. Like that was just yeah. I love seeing Apu in peril and just seeing him in misery and pain. Just I relish it all. Uh, but more and yeah, obviously the other thing too is one of the big turning points of this chapter is that the infection has now started working its way through Chopper, and I definitely remember liking this little twist a lot in the manga because it forced Chopper where into a situation where he no longer had the luxury of time and just making a mistake when like in this situation making when he needs to truly succeed now in making the antidote. Otherwise, anything else will not only result in him dying, but basically the entire alliance breaking down. And which arguably the scenario did feel a little forced for the sake of tension, but I like that it really does. I like that it really does well at truly pushing Chopper through the ringer, and it's going to be testing just how much his skills as a doctor have improved, particularly his precision in this case. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, this Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of Enemy, signing off. Later, everyone.